The blue skies of the Bahamas melt into a warm orange as the sun sinks into the ocean. For most, bidding farewell to the day with a view of the Caribbean horizon would be relaxing. But this particular sunset was anything but relaxing for one man, Randy Lanier. One day, Randy's job would be a race car driver. But today, idling in his 27-foot Magnum sport boat, he was waiting to pick up nearly a ton of marijuana in order to smuggle it into South Florida. And to be clear, a ton of weed is a ton of weed. It was Randy's maiden voyage as an international drug smuggler, and the drop was late. As the skies darkened, the anxiety rose. Finally, Randy's connection showed. Weighed down with a ton of weed, Randy gunned the 340 horsepower Magnum towards the South Florida coastline. Under the cloak of night, he piloted his craft through Florida's labyrinth of intercoastal waterways, channels that were frequently described as a smuggler's dream. The last step was to offload the bales of weed onto the beach. A crew was ready with several vans standing by to grab and go. Suddenly, Randy's radio chirped. "We got FBI agents on the beach." The work stops. Silence falls along the coast. Randy senses the end. He's caught. Busted. A smuggling career ended before it even began. As Randy is hiding behind some dunes, he sees the agents, who are really just a couple strolling the beach. The radio chirps again. "All clear." Everything went smoothly, and young Randy was now $5,000 richer. Today on Past Gas, Randy Lanier was one of the most exciting race car drivers of the 80s, but he also had a secret life as a drug smuggler. How did these two pursuits intertwine in the psyche of one adrenaline junkie? Was Randy a better smuggler or driver? And just how did a young guy from Virginia turn into a drug kingpin? All this and more on today's episode. Randy Lanier, Weed for Speed.
Past Gas Podcast. It's about cars, it's not about forts.
Big thank you to our sponsor this week, longtime partner of the show. I'm talking Valvoline Motor Oil. Valvoline, you know them. They were America's first motor oil brand, making them the original motor oil. Since their founding over 150 years ago, Valvoline and their scientists have been innovating, creating, and reinventing formulas like the first high-mileage oil, the first racing oil, and the first synthetic blend oil. All Valvoline oils exceed industry standards to provide the ultimate protection for every engine on the road. Valvoline's latest oil, their Extended Protection Full Synthetic, is their best oil ever. Valvoline Extended Protection, this newest formula offers the ultimate protection designed to extend the life of your engine. Valvoline Extended Protection is specifically formulated with dual defense additive technology. It's 10 times stronger against oil breakdown. It helps your engine grow old without acting old. So, if you need to do an oil change on your car, make sure you grab some Valvoline Extended Protection right now. I've got it in my car. I just did an oil change. I put this exact stuff, this Extended Protection, in my car. I love it. She's running better than ever. Thank you, Valvoline.
Fun fact, the beach that they landed on was in Melbourne, Florida, where Jeremiah's from.
That is where Jeremiah's from. They don't say like the Aussies. Melbourne. They probably enunciate the whole thing.
Yeah, maybe too much.
Like Versailles, Kentucky.
Yeah, that one really bugs me.
That one kills me. Have you ever driven a boat full of weed, Joe?
No, I drove a pontoon at Big Bear Lake, actually, with the guy who wrote this script, Jacob Wysocki.
You guys were smuggling weed across?
Yeah, we did. We were smoking a little bit of weed, not gonna lie. And it said no diving off the boat, and we just didn't think of it, and we dove off the boat, and it was frigid, and it shocked all of our muscles.
Oh my God.
And when we tried to get back on the boat, obviously there's like, since we had all jumped off, it rose a bit.
Yeah. Oh no.
And there was no ladder because it said no diving.
Yeah.
Obviously,
they don't
we
want to
understood
that.
Then what it meant. And it was like, I felt like I almost died.
Yeah.
Like it took like 3 people to pull me up on the boat. And my friend is a little bit bigger. Took like 4 people, and we're all just like trying to pull him up before his muscles atrophy. And it felt like a near-death experience.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So
and every time we hang out, like some iteration of that group were like, remember when we almost died?
That's why there's warning signs.
I know. We just didn't think of it. We're like, oh, those are just for like babies.
Yeah, I do like the inclination to just take safety warnings. Is like, that's not for me. I can handle it. I know what I'm doing.
I think of that when I take like an exit ramp or something, and it says like recommended speed for the ramp, and it's like 35, and I'm like, I could hit this at 50 and be all right.
Yeah. My car, dude, I've got coilovers on this. I can do this at like 75. And then you're like halfway through the turn and you're like, I understand why.
Yeah. I'm drifting a little bit towards
things
the
feel
rail.
a little unstable. I guess I understand why that sign's there. I'll remember that for next time and then just do the same thing again.
Yep. Me too. It's even sketchier in my 4Runner because it's lifted 3 inches. So
be safe out there. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Past Gas. Yeah, this week we're talking about Randy Lanier. We've actually covered Randy before a couple years ago. If you're a real dedicated fan of Donut, you probably remember that story.
If you're a true head.
If you're a true Donut head, we're going to get back into it. We're going to explore his story in much more depth this week. So stick around. And if this is your first time listening to the show, welcome. My name is Nolan Sykes. I'm one of the hosts here. And joining me today is my buddy, Joe Weber.
What's up, Slug Nation? Keep it winked.
No James this week. He's taking the day off, unfortunately, because I feel like he would have loved this story, but he'll be back next week. Just Joe and I today. Joe, we haven't hung out in a while. I feel like I've just seen you at the office like twice.
You've been ankle deep in the low car.
That's true.
And I feel like you're just so focused on it. I mean, which is a good thing because it needs to get done. But like, I feel like I've heard around the office, like, I haven't seen Nolan in a while. Nolan hasn't been in this video for a while. It's like, and then the comments too, people on YouTube are like, Nolan needs to be in more videos. So once you're done with Hilo.
Once Hilo's over, we'll be back in the swing of things. We've been really cranking on this. I think today the car could be finished, hopefully, knock on wood. All we got to do is finish up some body work. We got to bleed the radiator. I just put a new one in yesterday.
Because the other one had a hole in it?
The other one had a hole, unfortunately. And of course, I put a new one in, and then it's like a different brand. We went first, it had a Megan Racing.
Yeah. Because it's pretty affordable, right?
That's a pretty affordable one. But then we went like, that one wasn't available for like next day shipping. So we went with a Mishimoto. It has cool branding and like it kind of is an upgrade.
Yeah.
In name, I guess. Anyway, I put the thing back in thinking like, okay, it's basically the same as the Megan. Like this should fit no problem. And of course, like the fan shroud really didn't want to fit correctly because like the welds were crooked on the radiator itself. So that it didn't line up. So everything like now it has like a weird noise when the fans run.
Oh no.
So I'm just like, oh, cool. I'm over it, man. So that needs to be filled with coolant. I need to bleed the system. And then Jeremiah's going to wire up the tachometer and then we'll be done.
Nice.
With low car.
That's exciting.
It is, dude. This is week 4, I think, of high-low.
Every time the high-low shoots and builds come around the schedule, it's just like this lull of, I mean, everyone's like, oh, I dread this. We need to do it because it's our most popular thing. But it is just like this energy suck. And everyone's always pissed off for 6 weeks and like mad that we can't get in touch with any of you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, we basically live in that garage.
Yeah. It's a labor of love.
It's a labor of love. And I think that this time around, like we're taking the same amount of time for like half as many videos with this rotation. And I think that's worked out in our benefit because if we were trying to like force it and go to the track without things finished and without things how we would have liked
That's
it.
That's how you blew up your other motor.
Exactly. So we are learning from our mistakes. And this time around, like low car is in its best form yet, I think. Like we were able to take time and make things nice looking and make sure everything's sorted. And I'm just really, really excited for you guys to see it.
Just when you go to the track, have the mentality that you've got a ton of weed in your trunk. And you're trying to outrun the cops.
That's right. Let's get into our story then. Let's talk about Randy Lanier. Randy Lanier Why is okay? Every
Leave
time
that in, please.
every time we do the podcast, literally every time I wake up, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm chilling. And then once I hit the record button, that's when my post-nasal drip is like, oh, he's trying to talk? Let's get this guy.
It's just like cold oil. Once it warms up,
I think it is.
dripping.
And I'm like sitting up, I don't know. Anyway, Randy Lanier was born on a working-class Virginia tobacco farm. Let me try one more time. Jesus Christ. Tobacco firm. Randy Lanier was born on a working-class Virginia tobacco farm in 1954. He didn't come from money. His family's legacy was hard work for little pay. His parents moved Randy and his siblings to Hollywood, Florida, just as he became a teenager. Like many teens of the time, Randy gravitated toward the budding hippie culture of the late 60s. He grew his hair out and started smoking joints with his buddies on the beach. Sounds like a good time. Randy's dad wasn't too happy with his son's development and urged him to get a haircut. Instead, in Randy's words, quote,
just took off for a little while.
He and his buddies drove up the East Coast with, quote,
$20, a matchbox of weed, maybe a few hits of acid.
Randy says that during that summer, he and his stoner buddies, quote,
went to all the rock shows, every single one.
The list of bands he saw is truly impressive. They went to see the Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, Pink Floyd, Chuck Berry, and the Beach Boys, just to name a few. Pretty good lineup.
Do you know what I just realized?
What?
Do you remember that 90s band Buck Cherry?
Yeah.
It's just a play off of Chuck Berry. Can that be right?
Dude, if that is, that actually makes me like them a little more.
Yeah.
Because I don't like
them at all.
I don't like the musical stylings of Buck Cherry. They're not for me, but that is pretty funny.
But our head of production is in one of their music videos, so that's kind of cool.
That's crazy. Oh man. Dude, this lineup right here, that's like it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I feel like that would be a festival at the Rose Bowl nowadays.
Yeah.
It costs $300.
It's safe to say that this summer of rock and roll influenced Randy. It also stands in stark contrast to many of the race car drivers we profiled on this show before, the ones with rich parents who spend their teens karting or learning to drive on the vast acreage of their family estate. Unlike wealthier kids, Randy had to make some money. At age 15, Randy was on a construction job and started selling weed on the side. Nothing major, just a few bags here and there. But whatever skills you need to be an effective drug dealer, Randy seemed to have them. He rose to the ranks pretty quickly. And by 17, Randy was selling ounces. In fact, Randy was caught selling an ounce at his high school, and he decided to drop out instead of dealing with his suspension. Taking a step away from high school allowed him to focus more on his quote-unquote business. Randy would eventually get a GED, but stepping away from a traditional education proved very prosperous for Randy. Quickly, ounces turned into pounds, and pounds turned into entire bales of marijuana. The bales are what paid for his dream purchase, a 27-foot Magnum speedboat he bought for $18,000, around $92K in today's money. Damn.
What, he was 17 at this point? He bought a boat?
That's wild. I've never been to Florida.
Never been to Florida?
No.
Whoa.
Yeah, never been to Florida, but it sounds like a very, like the mix of like being on the beach. You know, I know I know Florida can also be very country depending on where you're at, like in the north. But like,
I mean, it's everywhere. Like you just move outside of the city and it's very country.
Yeah. So it's like a interesting mix of like country with a lot of beach, like Gulf Coast, laissez-faire kind of vibe. So like growing up in like the 70s or the 60s and the 70s at that time, it just like, yeah, it totally makes sense that this guy would he would drop out, going into selling pot and then buying a powerboat.
Yeah.
Like that totally tracks.
Seems like a natural progression.
Yeah. Initially, Randy used the boat for leisure, something to do on the weekends, take the boys out fishing. Randy's friends loved ripping it up on the boat, but one of his buddies saw it as an opportunity to expand the business. They asked Randy if he'd be willing to make a run to the Bahamas and secure nearly a ton of weed. Randy replied,
"Sure, why not?"
It was an easy yes for Randy. If caravanning in the summer of his youth taught him anything, he loved a good adventure. After the success of Randy's first run, he began making regular jaunts to the Bahamas for shipments. He also got married, had a kid, and started a jet ski rental business that operated as a front for him to funnel the drug money. In other words, typical Florida stuff.
You always got to have a front.
Got to have that front. So you got the weed money.
Yeah.
And then you use that money to pay your business for the jet ski rentals. And then likely those jet skis never really even go out on the water.
Yeah, I think it has to be a business that, you know, like it can't be a product sold because then you'd have to buy the product and then make it disappear or something. If it's something like renting a jet ski where it's like easy to fudge and you're like, yeah, that jet ski was out all day. I got $10,000 for that whole day of jet skiing. Like that's how you justify it.
There you go. Not only do we cover automotive and motorsports history on this show, we also teach you how to launder money. Yeah.
Laundering 101.
Which we learned from Better Call Saul.
I think if I had to launder money, I would probably have an art gallery.
An art gallery? Oh, that's, yeah.
Because you get property, you buy, a brick and mortar.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to even be filled with anything. You could throw a McDonald's wrapper on the ground and be like, that's art. And then also, if you do have a show, you get to rub elbows with like the social elite. Yeah. So you're making connections.
Dude, I always wonder how like art galleries survive.
That is a common way that wealthy people launder money. So how did a successful drug smuggler find a second, equally risky career as a race car driver? Flush with cash from his lucrative dealings, Randy was looking for a hobby. He found himself at the 1978 Miami Car Show held at the Miami Beach Convention Center. It was there that he picked up a pamphlet for a driving school. So he must have been, 18 at this point?
24 years old.
Randy took the pamphlet home, mulled it over, then called the number to sign up for a class. He didn't appear to have received a great deal of formal schooling. In fact, Randy had this to say about learning how to drive high-performance vehicles. I didn't have a clue. I just fucking drove. I like this guy.
Yeah.
After graduating from his class, he bought a beat-up 1957 Porsche Speedster. If he didn't have much in the way of experience or training, he had natural ability. His driving instructor said that Randy was among the most talented students he ever had. It seems likely that part of the talent lay in the risk center of Randy's brain. Scientists have actually studied the brains of risk-taking individuals like free climbers and base jumpers, finding that they don't process fear in a typical way. A typical brain releases two chemicals in response to fear, cortisol and dopamine. Cortisol is associated with stress, dopamine, pleasure. It's safe to assume Randy the racer had a skewed sense of risk tolerance, more dopamine than cortisol. Evading the U.S. Coast Guard with a boat full of drugs likely provided much of the same rush. Randy started entering his Porsche, which was wired with lamp cords, into amateur competitions. Talent could only take him so far, and he also spent plenty of time at the racetrack studying other drivers. He worked hard to master the basics of racing, among other things, cornering, brake control, and apexes. Randy's entry into professional racing in 1982 happened in a haphazard sort of way. He was attending the 24 Hours of Daytona as a spectator when he caught wind that a racer had fallen ill and was unable to compete. Randy took out the team's smoking hot Ferrari 512 and put in some speedy practice laps. Without much other choice, they gave him a shot. I remember this part of the documentary, he just kind of goes up to the guy and he's like, "Can I race?" And the guy's like, "I guess."
No way.
Yeah, I mean, that's how they made it seem. It was probably a little bit more formal than that, but...
That's so wild.
Randy and two other drivers managed to keep the Ferrari in third place for nearly 18 hours.
That's really cool. Dang.
Yeah, just kind of thrown into the fire. Unfortunately, the car was disqualified after Randy nuked its gearbox by driving a little bit too aggressively. Despite the DNF, Randy had attracted positive attention. He was invited to compete in the oldest auto endurance race of all time, 24 Hours of Le Mans.
Wow, what an impression.
I know. Just to be like, oh, my second race is Le Mans.
He must have been really, really good.
In France, Randy got bit by the race car lifestyle bug hard. I mean, yeah, it's your second race. You're racing in Le Mans. Of course, this dude's got the bug.
It's like when you and I took our stand-up class And then
Yeah.
we had those 2 shows. Like our first show was like the bringer or like the showcase. Like everyone's friends was there, and like it's a very encouraging
packed.
thing. It was great. It felt awesome. I was like, oh man, I'm like pretty good at this.
Yeah.
Then we went to the comedy store.
Yeah.
And like it was at the in the belly room, which is like a small room.
Yeah.
And it was like,
they should call it the crotch room because that's what it smells like.
and like I had a great set there too.
Yeah.
Like I killed it, and I was like, damn, I'm like pretty good at this. I love this comedy lifestyle. And then the next show was in the main room at the comedy store, and I like bombed, and I was like,
Oh, no.
Well, I didn't bomb. I just had a bad set, and I was like, oh man, reality's coming down on me.
I truly think it takes someone to be like a masochist in some sense, where like you are past the point of not caring about bombing, when like sometimes you just like crave that awkwardness, and you can live in it. And I never got to that point. So
We got to get back into it, dude.
yeah, let's do it. Let us know in the Apple reviews if you want to come see us do stand up. Big thanks to Chime for sponsoring this episode of Past Gas. No one likes waiting on a paycheck, especially when you've got bills due and your baby is hungry. Good thing there's Chime. Now you can get your paycheck up to 2 days early with direct deposit. That's up to 2 days more to save, pay bills, and generally just feel good about your money situation. But Chime is more than just about getting paid early. It's also an award-winning mobile app, checking account, debit card, and optional savings account. In a world where there's a million different apps, I really like Chime's mobile app. It makes it really easy to do stuff that you don't even need like a physical debit card. I think that's great. So what are you waiting for? Hopefully not your paycheck. Get started with Chime today. Applying for a free account takes less than 2 minutes. Get started at chime.com/gas. That's chime.com/gas. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank or Stride Bank NA, members FDIC. Early access to direct deposit funds depend on payer. Big thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode of Past Gas. Everyone experiences burnout. For me, at the start of the pandemic, I was working 11 hours a day at my desk at my home. Even though it was nice working at home, I did feel that burnout. I was feeling stressed. Life can be overwhelming, and many people are burnt out without even knowing it. Symptoms can include lack of motivation, irritability, fatigue, and more. We associate burnout with work, but that's not the only cause. Any of our roles in life can lead to us feeling burnt out. BetterHelp Online Therapy wants to remind you to prioritize yourself. Talking with someone can help figure out what's going on, causes stress in your life, help you figure out a path to feeling better. I think it's really easy to find a therapist on BetterHelp that can help you with whatever. They're specialized in a bunch of different types of therapy, so finding the perfect person is really easy with BetterHelp. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/pastgas. That's betterhelp.com/pastgas. Thanks, BetterHelp. Big thanks to Peloton for sponsoring this episode of Past Gas. If you're like me, you might not feel like you have time to fit a workout into your day. You're busy, you're commuting, you get home, you feel tired. I get it. But that's why Peloton is so great. You can find workouts that fit into anyone's schedule. Peloton has a team of world-class instructors ready to motivate you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Peloton instructors are highly trained fitness pros who motivate you through every workout, whether you're a regular at the gym or just someone who is new to getting back into working out. Whatever your fitness level, Peloton instructors don't just teach, they motivate. Peloton fits seamlessly into your life. Maybe you're looking for a 10-minute upper body stretch between calls or a 40-minute run before bed. Peloton works with your schedule, whether you have 5 minutes or an hour. Plus, you'll never have an awkward encounter in the locker room again. I love how many different workouts Peloton offers. If you don't like biking, there's also yoga, there's, stretching, whatever you want, you can find it at Peloton. Right now is the perfect time to try out Peloton. The Peloton Bike Plus is now $500 less, its best price yet, including free delivery and setup. And there are more game-changing prices available on the original Peloton Bike and Peloton Tread. Visit onepeloton.com to learn more. Randy had quickly gone from a hobbyist to someone who was ready to dedicate his life to racing.
Just like I was ready to dedicate my life to the microphone.
Yeah. Until like 10 people don't like your set. Randy had dominated the Southeast amateur circuit. Now Lanier began racing at the IMSA GT circuit. He must have felt right at home. Drugs and the Florida race scene were synonymous, and the International Motorsports Association especially so. In fact, the nickname for the league was the International Drug Smugglers Association.
Wow.
Just like in F1, if you followed the money, it took you to some pretty dark places. From 1981 to 1983, Randy drove with a slew of different teams with several different cars. Cars like Chevys, Porsches, and Ferraris. He didn't perform well enough to garner much attention in those first few years, though.
That's so wild, though, man. He was like learning how to race, and then like 4 years later, he's at Daytona and hops in a car. They're like, yeah, okay, he's pretty good. And then the next race, yeah, it's just insane.
Kind of wax poetic about this time where racing was more accessible, and you could just like walk up and become friends with a team lead and be like, hey, you know, if this guy's sick, you know, I can race too.
Yeah. I wonder if there's been like not an inflation of talent. Well, sort of.
I think so.
Like back then, yeah, like these cars were designed. First of all, they weren't as like advanced as the cars today, but also like I think racing as a profession hadn't been around as long. So at that time, you didn't have kids that started driving when they were literal children.
Yeah.
Like we do today. So like if you just had like an innate talent for it, you probably did have a leg up on some people who just like wanted to do it for fun that were just like rich guys, you know?
Yeah. Dynasties, like, you know, like family dynasties weren't really a thing yet. This is like the late 70s.
Yes. Or mid 80s. So there were some racing families around, but like
a couple racing families.
Yeah. Like not like there are today. That's for
it
sure.
Also kind of the weird thing about racing back then is it existed where it was like, you know, rich people did it, but it also felt kind of like a blue collar thing, or maybe not scummy, but just like below other rich people activities.
Yes.
And so that's what makes it cool is like, you know, you get weird characters that don't care about status, don't care about whatever, and just want to race and are just like throwing themselves around in these old dangerous cars.
Yeah, it's super. I like that you bring that up. It's like it varies by discipline. Like Formula One, it's a very old money, white collar.
It's always been high society.
Yeah, high society organization. Whereas drag racing, that's a very blue collar sport. NASCAR, oval racing was very blue collar, but now we're kind of seeing like the dynasty dynamic, the old money kind of effect that you're talking about. Think like motocross, that's a very like blue collar kind of deal. MotoGP, I'm not so sure. Like the road courses.
You need money to do MotoGP.
Yeah. In 1984, his drug running career even more lucrative, Randy started his own racing team, Blue Thunder Racing. By Randy's own estimate, he dumped millions and millions of dollars into this team over its lifespan. And at some point, he stopped counting. He bought 2 March racing cars, both with 5.8-liter Chevy V8s under the hood. He bought a warehouse, he hired a team of mechanics, and even brought on an ex-Formula One crew chief. The rest of Blue Thunder was comprised of his drug smuggling buddies. Blue Thunder Racing was famously, or infamously, known as the only team where every crew member had a Rolex. Hell yeah. I'm not like a big watch guy, but I saw a GQ video on like different levels of watch affordability, and now I'm like, watches are kind of cool. All right.
I get sucked into those kind of things really easily. I love collecting stuff. So it's probably better that I don't get into watches because it seems like a black hole.
Blue Thunder wasn't just flashy off track. Their first year of racing caught everybody's attention. Randy shocked the IMSA paddock, winning the Los Angeles Grand Prix, beating out racing legends like Fittipaldi and Al Hobart. After that first win, the Thunder kept rolling, notching wins at Monterey, Charlotte, Portland, the Michigan 500, and the New York 500. And at the end of the year, Randy was awarded the most improved driver and was named Camel's GT champion. But just like going from slinging ounces to bartering weed bales, Randy needed a bigger rush. He set his sights on the Indy 500.
So this doesn't really give it the weight that it should get. Like winning the IMSA championship in one of the first years that you start a team is insane.
That's wild, man.
He was going against the Porsche factory team.
Yeah, that's wild, dude. That's insane. Yeah, I mean, what a crazy set of circumstances. Like, you have a guy that is like really good at selling drugs,
yeah,
or at least smuggling, but also just like an innately talented driver. Like,
yeah, you have to be insanely talented to even get in the top 10 for this.
Make no mistake, it takes money to win because you got to have the equipment, but like you can't just stick a scrub in a really good car and win.
No, you need talent.
Back at IndyCar. Yeah, that's right. So he's going to take that innate talent he had and take it to Indianapolis.
Oh, that's another crazy jump too, to be like, these cars that go 190 are not fast enough. I need to go 220.
Yeah. With no roof over my head.
Yeah.
Randy had no experience in driving Indy cars, which were way faster than anything he had driven before. It was also a much more deadly and dangerous discipline than IMSA. And to compete at Indy, Randy would need to take that tap pouring drug money into racing and upgrade it to a fire hose. Luckily, massive balls and an excess of cash continued to be Randy's twin calling cards. On the day of the Indy 500, he broke the record for the fastest speed during a qualifying lap. He was racing in a March 86C fitted with a Cosworth DFX V8 engine.
Hell yeah.
The race itself further proved that Randy was the real deal. Randy was the only rookie to finish, placing an impressive 10th place. That's insane. He was also awarded a true career milestone, Indy 500 Rookie of the Year.
That's insane, dude. What? So the Cosworth DFV engine, the V8, was like the engine for multiple different disciplines of racing for most of the 70s.
Yeah. IndyCar, Formula One.
Yep. The DFX, I think, is the turbo version of that, which is even more badass.
Jeez. Regardless of all the success, Randy wasn't truly a full-time racer. He was still living a double life. Randy couldn't just race. He simultaneously trafficked the entire time he was racing. Frankly, Randy was addicted to racing, and drugs were ironically how he earned his fix. Every step up the racing ladder required an equal increase in his slice of the black market. More cars, more drugs. And outside those, Randy was hardly a monk, spending lavishly on perks like private jets and penthouse suites. The high school dope dealer was now a kingpin.
There's a funny story from the documentary where...
What's this documentary called?
It's called Bad Sport, and it's one episode of a miniseries that outlines, like people cheating or whatever.
Gotcha.
His is really good. But one thing, they don't try to make him out to be a saint, but they really like take the edge off of, the massive amounts of drugs that he smuggled in, and they downplay a lot of things. But yeah, I think one of the races in Miami, he was like, yeah, so I was racing in this one and I wanted my friends to see, so I rented out an entire high rise. We had a party and there was lots of coke. I'm not going to lie.
Wow.
Fun dude though. As mentioned before, Randy's smuggling empire started with a single boat. Early on, he worked as a middleman. Dealers would have him do pickups and drop-offs of products, and he'd make 20% of the load as payment. Breaking the law wasn't the only danger. One time Randy got caught in a tropical storm. His boat was getting pounded by 20-foot waves. He managed to anchor at a small island 100 miles from Miami. The bottom of the boat was full of precious cargo, also known as weed, so Randy was forced to weather the storm on deck. In Randy's words, you don't really let fear into your mind at moments like that. Again, Randy's ability to manage fear, or maybe more accurately, shove it aside, often served him well. This is a skill that you can develop as a racer to kind of just turn off that like constant worry.
That's why I like driving at track instead of driving aggressively on the road. Because I feel like when you're at the track, you're not going to like smash into oncoming traffic.
Absolutely.
And you can just kind of like let go and just go as hard as you can.
Yeah. Randy soon upgraded to a fleet of boats, but he was still only a mid-level player. But his racing habit demanded he grow bigger and faster. Soon, Randy was running operations with a 65-foot cigarette boat that could fit 18,000 pounds of pot. That's a lot. He moved up the food chain of distributors, getting closer to the source, allowing him to pocket more of the profits. His fleet grew to include Zodiac inflatable boats, tugboats, and even a Norwegian fishing vessel named Ursa Major.
The Big Bear.
The Big Bear. So maybe this is the one I was thinking about.
Yeah. That was the boat you guys were on, the pontoon boat.
Yeah, so there's a funny story from his like right-hand man, this gnarly dude who just swears the entire documentary, who is also the cook for the racing team.
Oh, sick.
But they had so much weed on this fishing vessel and they would transport it to the beach using these Zodiac inflatable boats. He mentioned that like Navy SEAL teams use these boats and they're fast and
rib boats, basically.
But they were trying to like, you know how when you take groceries in your apartment and you try to load up as many bags, like they're just trying to get it done as fast as possible because the sun was about to come up and they had this huge load and this big dude just had to like put his body over the entire load as they're on the Zodiac, just like ripping, like so nothing falls off. Before Randy joined IMSA, he was doing 15,000-pound jobs with a $4.5 million payout. As he got going with Blue Thunder, Randy was approached by another drug smuggler named George Brock. Together, they devised a plan to buy a football field-sized shipping container vessel they dubbed the Barge.
The Barge.
Large barge. The Barge was a game changer. A signature feature of the ship was its secret compartments. Usually, the bottom of a barge is filled with seawater to aid with buoyancy, but Randy's team realized that they could weld a steel false bottom and hide marijuana underneath the seawater, still safe and dry. If any FBI or Coast Guards took a peek, all they would see was the salt water on top.
Smart.
Yeah, this is really ingenious, and they detail it in the documentary. So, yeah, normally the full bottom is used to like suck in seawater if they need to go up or down in level in the water.
Gotcha.
The bottom was welded, so there's a secret compartment, and when they would dock, all that seawater they would jettison it, and then they would open these welded steel false bottoms, fill a shipping container, and then that would be like one of the last shipping containers they take off.
Oh, I see.
But since it was shrouded in the cargo hold, customs was none the wiser.
Wow. Right under their nose.
Yeah. But as you'll see, there's a drawback. On the barge's maiden voyage, it transported an incredible 100,000 pounds of marijuana.
Oh my God.
The weed was stacked 2 stories tall. Very few people had the balls or the recklessness to bring that much weight in at a time. On top of requiring guts, it was a logistical Mount Everest. But Randy felt like he couldn't miss, comparing the experience to racing a track. You're hitting your lines, hitting your apexes, you're in the zone. Randy even bought his crew 100 club hats to celebrate the milestone. A little too high key.
That's funny.
Trying to, be a little bit more hush-hush about this.
It's kind of like the 200-mile-an-hour club hats you get at Bonneville and such, or 300.
Oh, I didn't know those were a thing.
Yeah.
After the first barge job, Randy began to rise in popularity on the racetrack. He was a busy, busy man. When he wasn't racing, he was smuggling. The barge continued to work, pulling multiple jobs of over 75,000 pounds. Randy was living lavishly, beyond the income of a man with a jet ski rental business.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
That's his legitimate business.
It's his only legitimate business.
Dang, they must be doing really well if you can have an IMSA team and race at Indy 500.
Randy started to get the attention of the FBI, obviously. He started getting the sneaking feeling that he was being watched. In spite of the added pressure, Randy continued to set up smuggling deals. The next one, his biggest yet.
Oh, no.
I know, man. Just chill out for a little bit. If you think you're being watched, just go to the jet ski kiosk for a while and just chill.
Yeah, and just chill out. Chill on the beach, man.
In Randy's own mind, this was going to be his last haul, his crowning jewel. He was going to bring in about 83 tons of marijuana worth $55 million on the street. Insanely, this was happening right around the time Randy and his team were set to race the Indy 500. A week before Indy, Randy got some bad news. One of his co-conspirators had been arrested and flipped.
Oh, no.
Yeah, not good. He had tipped the feds off to Randy's barge. The barge had been headed for New Orleans, but thanks to the tip, Randy was able to reroute the ship and avert disaster. So yeah, this is the part of the documentary where it's coming from Colombia. It's filled with 83 tons of weed. And by the time it gets like halfway through the Caribbean, that's when this guy calls him up and says his cousin got popped. He flipped. He ratted out Randy and his crew. They got to do something. They got to act quick. So before it hits New Orleans, they decide they're going to reroute it through the Panama Canal and have it pop up in San Francisco. But that's going to take an extra 6 months. So this is like a huge backslide for the team.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, the FBI had lost its scent. So they were scanning every single ship that entered New Orleans for 3 months because of this tip. The cost was more than just cash. In the prolonged journey, seawater had seeped under the secret steel panels. As a result, some of the weed had decomposed, creating an excess of methane gas. When welding tools were used to open the hidden compartment, the gas exploded and killed 2 people.
Oof.
Randy evaded responsibility. He wasn't on the ship, so it wasn't his problem.
Oh, man.
It started to rust through. Seawater got in. The marijuana decomposed and made methane gas. And these dudes exploded when they tried to cut it open.
Yeah.
And this is one of those times where they kind of soften it because he doesn't want to indict himself any further.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, do you know anything about this? And he just like smiles and he's like, I didn't see it. And that's like all he has to say.
Wow. Big thank you to our sponsor this week, Credit Karma. Are you earning credit card rewards? Credit Karma can help you compare your rewards options so you can find a card that fits your lifestyle, helping you earn miles or cash back for spending you're going to be doing anyway. Credit Karma uses your credit profile to show you offers that are tailored to your financial situation. Credit Karma partners with a wide range of card issuers, so you can be sure that you are exploring all sorts of options. Best of all, Credit Karma uses your credit data to show you your chances of approval before you even apply, helping you apply with more confidence. Comparing cards on Credit Karma is 100% free and won't affect your credit scores. Credit Karma. Create your own karma. If you're looking for a credit card, I think Credit Karma is the best option out there. There's no one better to help you find your right credit card. Ready to find the card for you? Head to Credit Karma and check out your personalized mix of offers today. Go to creditkarma.com or the Credit Karma app to find the card for you. That's creditkarma.com. Credit Karma. Hey, another thank you to our sponsor this week, Valvoline. You already know Valvoline makes the best motor oil in the world, but did you know they also make the best gear oil? That's right, Valvoline. It's the #1 gear oil brand, and they now have a new flexible pouch packaging that is extremely easy to use in tight spaces and produces less waste. It's better for the environment. Valvoline Flex Fill makes gear oil easier to use than ever. This is a big old squeezable pouch. It's like a giant Capri Sun that allows for less waste and easier application. Valvoline offers 2 full synthetic grades, 75W90 and 75W140, available for exceptional high and low temperature protection. During high-low, we had to drain our CD009 Nissan transmission. We put some of this stuff right back in it when it was in the car. And with that flexible packaging, it was super easy to do. This stuff also has an anti-foaming agent that quickly breaks down any foam for better lubrication of your drivetrain. So whether it's motor oil or gear oil, Valvoline has you covered. Make sure you grab that stuff. Valvoline, thank you very much. Randy's last haul made him incredibly wealthy, but even more paranoid. Randy started taking extreme precautions to protect himself. He and his wife got a sham divorce to protect assets. He started renting condos under fake names, using only payphones, and even had to sneak into the hospital in the dead of night to see his newborn son. Like the final hours of any drug-fueled party, it all got pretty sad. With the FBI now openly investigating him, Randy wasn't even racing anymore. The risks he had taken had destroyed the very thing he was passionate about. One day, while munching on a bagel, Randy saw a television report.
Indy race car driver Randy Lanier indicted on federal drug trafficking charges. Full stop.
Randy finished his bagel, packed his bags, and got the hell out of there. This was in the middle of the war on drugs. And even if it wasn't, when you start talking about tons of drugs, life sentences start to enter the picture. Randy got out of the country with a fake passport and headed to jolly old London. He laid down low for a while and then found himself in Monte Carlo, gambling at luxurious casinos. He wasn't quite sure what to do. He thought about retiring in Spain or racing in New Zealand under a fake name.
So yeah, this was when Reagan first started his war on drugs, and there was, I can't remember what the phrase was, but if you got caught trafficking, you got a life sentence. And they were actually handing out life sentences to people trafficking. So the stakes got raised.
Randy eventually ended up making a trip to Antigua, where he owned some property, but that ended up being a little bit too predictable of a move. The authorities were waiting for him when he arrived. Randy was headed to trial. Most of his smuggling team had also been arrested and charged. One damning piece of evidence procured through an arrest was a ledger book that had every haul Randy had done with weight and the amount of money they made. Randy was going down. It was just a matter of how much time he would do.
Because all these guys are like kind of scrappy, and they felt like they needed a front in the form of a person to do their business dealings. So this guy, Chuck, I don't know how they found him. Maybe he's just a friend, but he was like very upstanding looking, looked like a businessman. They had this guy do a lot of the business dealings, like rent apartments that house the weed, buying ships, stuff like that. So this guy was like their business guy, and he eventually got caught. And in his car, he had a briefcase with this little ledger in it with just a bunch of random numbers written on it. But that was all the hauls they did and all the money they made off. This is basically like the golden ticket for the FBI to get all these guys in.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Randy and his cohorts managed to traffic more than 300 tons of that sticky icky into the U.S. Prosecutors estimated Randy alone had earned almost $70 million. Randy had overseen an operation covering multiple countries and states and had hundreds of employees. Randy Lanier was convicted of drug trafficking, fraud, and running a continuing criminal enterprise. The sentence? Life in prison with no parole. Randy was eventually sent to solitary confinement in a maximum security prison after he attempted multiple escapes, ranging from a failed helicopter rescue attempt to sneaking out of a vending machine. Randy had become a failure. His racing career was over. His wife was also in jail. His father would die in jail for crimes related to Randy's dealings, and his friends were either snitches or also imprisoned. As the years went by, Randy accepted what he felt to be his fate. To die in prison.
So the reason that his dad got sucked into it was because right when all this was starting to go down, he took $3 million in cash and drove to Virginia and had his dad bury it on his property.
Oh.
So his dad, unfortunately, just got sucked into this whole thing. And because he wanted to protect his son, kind of took the fall and went to jail, which is really sad.
Yeah. Dang. Fast forward to October 15th, 2015. Randy, now 61 years old, had served a whopping 27 years of his life sentence. Against all odds, however, Randy was walking out of prison a free man under mysterious circumstances. The decision to free him is sealed in federal documents, and Randy himself won't comment. One theory is that Randy had some sort of dirt against the federal government, knowledge that they had acted corruptly in their seizure of his assets, but it's impossible to know for sure what happened.
Well, okay. So they touch on this in that documentary and they make it seem like Obama pardoned him, but
I think a life sentence for drug trafficking is like insane.
But so Obama definitely softened the laws for nonviolent drug traffickers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because it was only marijuana, because he had never done cocaine trafficking, that was one of the reasons that he was able to be sprung.
That makes sense. Since his release, Randy is back in Florida and back racing cars. He's racing for Rally Baby Racing. I think I read a news article about this a couple of years ago in like Road and Track. And
is Vince Vaughn the title sponsor?
Yeah, Rally Baby. But I think the team has like an E30 that they race or something. It's
that's fun.
It's a far cry from IMSA, but hey, he's out of prison. He's racing, so that's good for him. Aside from being at the track, Randy is back with his first wife and the mother of his 2 children. They aren't married again yet, but he's hoping she will say yes in the future. Randy appears to be on the straight and narrow and is dabbling in activism as well, raising awareness for people who are wrongfully incarcerated for nonviolent drug charges. He campaigns for drug-related criminals to be released, especially those with life sentences. Randy says, quote,
I don't have regrets, but I do have remorse. I just want to do good for people now.
Perhaps the lesson here is that if you're an adrenaline junkie, pick a habit that won't land you in federal prison. But it's easy to see how Randy got swept up in the crazy momentum of his twin careers, and how inseparable his drug smuggling must have felt from paying for his racing. It's a sad fact that his career ended just as he was getting started, with a Rookie of the Year title at the Indy 500. Still, most people never reach the top of the mountain to begin with, and even fewer get a whole second chance at life.
Well said. There's a funny moment in the end of the documentary where, so the guy Chuck, who is like the front man, the fake businessman, he flipped on Randy, even though they were like really good pals. And there's like a reuniting moment in the end where Randy had gotten out of jail. Chuck served 7 years, but had been out of jail for 20 years at this point. And they have Randy go over to Chuck's house. And there's this like, you know, when you like did your best friend wrong and you're just like, yeah, there's this feeling of like, you know, you're being really nice to me right now, but I was a shithead. There's this moment where Chuck sees Randy for the first time in 20 years or 30 years or something. And he does this like overly welcoming thing, but you can tell that like, you know, I fucked up. Like,
yeah.
But he's like, he just like swears too much. And he's like, it's so fucking good to see you, Randy. Like, I fucking love you. And it's like kind of awkward, but very funny. He brings up a good point. Randy brings up a good point. And he's like, it's a plant, man. It's a plant that grows. Mm-hmm. We're not refining anything like cocaine.
Yeah.
Like to put people in prison for life for a plant is insane.
It is ridiculous, and not to be at risk of sounding like your typical freaking SoCal stoner, dude. You're right. It's just a plant. Like that was ridiculous. The war on drugs was a sham.
The more that you make it illegal, the more you're empowering this black market.
Yeah, you know, it's like a weird thing. Like if the plant, dude, the flower, dude, the flower,
the bud, dude.
if that bud wasn't illegal, then Randy wouldn't have made as nearly as much money as he did. He probably wouldn't have had the opportunity, or at least the funds to fund his racing program. It's just like they are linked. Like Randy's story is like a perfect circle in that way, which is just crazy. I'm glad that he's out of prison. I'm very glad that he's back in the car.
Yeah, more power to him that he was able to fund his hobby that he was very good at through this illegal vein. But yeah, sucks he got caught up in it.
So that's our story this week. We have a letter from David. Hey guys, I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times by now, but in the Yugo episode, you guys mentioned that Renault had a trademark on the 3-digit car name with a 0 in the middle. You got every detail about that story right, except that it wasn't Renault. It was Peugeot.
That's right.
That's right.
The 205.
Thank you, David. I'm pretty sure you actually told that story correctly in the past, though. especially the part about the Porsche 901. I was a factory-trained Porsche tech back in the day, so I've heard the story quite a few times. It was a great episode, blah, blah, blah. Made me think that maybe Malcolm Bricklin needs his own episode.
Ooh.
Thank you for the entertainment. I've listened to every episode. I've been watching Donut on Facebook since at least 2017. Car nerds are the best nerds. And that's from David in Findlay, Ohio. Thank you very much for the correction and kind words, David. If you'd like to hit us up For your own correction and or kind words, email us at passgas@donutmedia.com. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode. This was a fun one.
Absolutely.
Joe, great job co-hosting with me. Thanks for all your insight. You can follow Joe at Joe G. Weber.
I just want to say, if you have a correction for us, don't feel weird about sending it in. We feel weird about saying stuff that's wrong, especially if it's something that we're just spitting out of our mouth holes, unadulterated. So please correct us. We love it. We don't like being wrong. So
we love it. Give me those corrections, baby.
Also, Malcolm Bricklin is a really good recommendation. If you guys have any other recommendations for episodes, maybe a story or, some weird car that turned around the fortunes of a car company, we love that kind of stuff. So please send us your recs, passgas@donutmedia.com. We will respond.
Yeah, so go ahead, follow Joe at Joe G. Weber. Follow me at Nolan J. Sykes. Follow Donut at Donut Media. Big thank you to our producer, as always, Gavin Kinsel.
And our writer, Jacob Oisaki.
Jacob Wasaki, stay on that pontoon boat, man. All right. See you next week.